the Hebrew announcement will be followed by an English one. אני אדבר בקצרה על חוק השבות ועל הבעיה, ולמעשה בכלל על הבעיה של ההגירה לישראל, שאנחנו מתמודדים איתה בהרבה מאוד רמות ובעיות, וגם על החוק שעבר בקריאה ראשונה בכנסת בשבוע שעבר, שנועד באמת לפתור את הבעיה של כפל הביטוח הלאומי, בעיה שהיא מאוד מאוד מוכרת לציבור האמריקאי-ישראלי, ה-dual citizens, אבל הציבור הישראלי כמעט לא מכיר אותה, ומדובר באחד מחסמי העלייה המשמעותיים ביותר, שאני מקווה שהוא לקראת פתרון. אז אני אדבר ותאר זאת. But I will speak in English if it's okay. I will explain it in English. But the problem with Aliyah to Israel is double. We have a double problem. The people that we want that they will make Aliyah, people that the law of return was intended to bring them here, also known as Jews, most of them are not coming. We know that the numbers from the largest diaspora, the US, the second largest, the third, are not growing enough fast enough. I hope they will grow. I hope they will grow for good reasons and not for bad reasons, but apparently it looks like it's going to grow for bad reasons, because of anti-Semitism, because of what we see in the campuses and on the streets in the US and all around the world. But they're not coming, and it's part of it is because bureaucracy and double taxation that I will get to soon. But they're not coming, and the people who do come through the law of return from former Soviet Union countries. So in the beginning, of course, most of the Olim, even from Soviet Union countries, were Jews. But now it's the minority of Olim that are coming from former Soviet Union countries are Jews. Most of them are what we call law of return eligible. Law of return eligible is a group that is ever growing because it adds people that are descendants of Jews, and they are not Jews. Not halachically, and sometimes not even by their own definition. Most of the time, not by their own definition. Now, this creates Aliyah that is challenging. The challenges of Aliyah were always present to get people, even when there is no problem, not with the family and not with the economy and not with the it's not easy to move to a different country. It's not easy to go to a place where the language is different. It's not easy. Everyone who makes Aliyah, and many people here in the room did this, and my family did this, and my wife's family did this. By the way, my family made Aliyah from the US not so long ago. It was 1914, but 110 years ago. But my wife's family made Aliyah from the US more recently, and a lot of friends and family and neighbors made Aliyah. It's not easy, and many people we know don't stay. They try, and they come back, and they're on the line, back and forth, if they're very, very committed. So it's not easy, but it's definitely not easy when you're not part of the Jewish people. It's not. The land of Israel is a very good place to live in, but it's not the easiest place to live in, especially if you're not a Jew. So when people come and make Aliyah and they're non-Jews, most of them don't stay here. And that's what we see in the numbers. The most of the people that come from the former Soviet Union countries and they're non-Jews, they're leaving. But in the meantime, the state of Israel invested a lot of money in bringing them in, a lot of money in trying to keep them in. And then, so instead that Aliyah, and we know that Aliyah from the US, Nefesh B'Nefesh numbers, is very good to the Israeli economy, because most people do stay, and most people bring their assets and work in Israel and stay in Israel, and their family stays in Israel, so they have the support of the community. So it's good financially also, and of course, ideologically. When we invest in Aliyah that is not directed on Jews, we're not doing a good service to them. We're not doing a good service to the state of Israel, and we're making Aliyah from a solution. We're making Aliyah a problem. So that's why it's in our platform, and it's also in the coalition agreement to amend the law of return, the law of and change it that it will be for Jews. Now, of course, we know that the people of Israel all around the world experienced different challenges. One of them is the fact that you have people that has non-Jews in their immediate family. It needs to be solved. We don't want, and that was the original reason to add to the law of return the eligibles that are non-Jews. We don't want someone that we are very we don't want to judge and to criticize. But he married a non-Jew, but he's a Jew, and he wants to make Aliyah. We don't want, the state of Israel made a decision. We don't want him to make the choice between the land of Israel and the Aliyah and his wife or his children. We don't want him to make this choice. He can come and he can bring his children and he can bring his wife even if they're non-Jews. And they will be considered olim, and we'll deal with the issue of Giyur and other issues later. But we don't want to have any Jew to have to choose between his family and his homeland. And that's a noble cause. Even with the price that the family pays and the price that the state pays, it's okay. That's the decision the state of Israel has done. But that's not the case anymore. Out of the olim that coming from the US, more than, I think, 98% are Jews. The other 2% are really the situations that we are talking about, when a Jew is making Aliyah and some parts of his family are non-Jews and they're also becoming eligible. Okay. But when you look at the former Soviet Union, you see that more than 70% sometimes are non-Jews. And they're not making Aliyah with their family members. They're making Aliyah just by themselves. They're coming here. Most of them don't stay. Most of them take a passport and then use the State of Israel passport, which is better from their own, and move to other places after all the investment the State of Israel has done. It does not help anyone. Not the Ole and not the State of Israel. So our offer is very simple. It's to say that a grandson that is once removed is not eligible by himself, and the people who are eligible to make Aliyah to Israel because their relations, their family relations to a Jew that is eligible by himself, will be able to make Aliyah if the Jew himself makes Aliyah, and that makes sense. For the family reunification problems, that makes sense. Now, this has nothing to do with, because we did not want this change to be controversial. And we didn't want, because I think that what I said is making sense and is supposed to be supported by anyone who understands, who sees the numbers. It's not about right and left or different ideology. We did not even get into and we were a little bit criticized for it, but I think it's a good idea not to touch this issue now. We did not change the definition of a Jew, meaning we did not get into the issue is Jew is according to halacha, to Orthodox way, Reform way, conservative. We did not get into it. And what it means is that according to the way it's been interpreted by Israeli courts and by the Ministry of Interior in Israel, we don't dig in the U.S. We don't dig in history to see if you're part of a community, a Reform community. We don't look back. If you're part of a community, you're eligible. We're not trying to try to check what exactly way did one of your family relative converted in the past. It's not an issue according to the current state of affairs, and there is no offer on the table to change it because it's not the issue. It's not a problem with the U.S. And I said in one of the interviews that I made on this issue that I wish that the problem that the state of Israel will face is the fact that we will have so many olim from the U.S., Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, that we'll have that will be the problem. That we have a lot of olim that are Reform Jews, and then we have to find out what to do with them, or how many budgets you should give to Reform synagogues. I want those problems. We will deal with them. The problem today is that not Orthodox, not Reform, not conservative Jews from the U.S., not the numbers of Aliyah are not big enough. And the vast majority of Aliyah is by all means is Orthodox, that we know. But that doesn't matter. I wish the state of Israel had the problem of so many Reform Jews, and then we'll have to make sure how you give them budgets for the Reform temple that we'll want to build. I wish that would be the problem in the state of Israel. And that's why this change, this offer got a lot of criticism from people it will never affect. And I think that our job is to make Israel as welcoming as possible for olim, from the US, from the UK, from Australia, from France, and from any other country. And in order to do that, we need to focus our efforts on and change the law of return in that manner. And we need to make sure that the bureaucracy and the demands and the absurd demands that this strange system of laws created in Israel will be removed. Just an example, and that's something I learned and I was amazed. If a Jew went and became a Christian, he is not eligible to make Aliyah. That's the law. It says it specifically in the law that if you converted to Christianity, to other religion, you are not. That means you said, I don't want to be Jewish anymore, and then you are not eligible. But if a grandson of a Jew who was never a Jew is a dedicated Christian, he is eligible to make Aliyah. So even if he wasn't Christian, he made the choice to become a Christian. And he's non-Jew, so it's not even halachically it's okay for him to become Christian. It's not a problem with the Jewish law. He will continue to be eligible to make Aliyah, and the Jew will not. That's one of the problems with the very strange set of laws and rules and procedural barriers that we put on Aliyah just because we are afraid to touch the legislation and the procedures of Aliyah. And I promise just a few sentences on the double taxation issue. Israeli system of taxation is local, meaning if you are a resident of Israel and you make your money in Israel, you're paying Israeli taxes. And American way of taxation is personal, meaning they look if you are a citizen of America, the US, and then you are getting taxed. Doesn't matter where you live, according to American tax. Now, there are treaties and they solve most of the problem. It's if you have a problem that you get double taxation from the US and Israel, it means that you make a lot of money, and I'm happy for you, because most people are not in this case. But Social Security is not the case, and because Israel is the largest, I think the largest diaspora of US citizens, and the US is the largest diaspora of Israeli citizens, then there is no treaty, because the amounts of money that will have to change hands on Social Security are enormous. So there is no treaty. And that means that if someone makes Aliyah to Israel and he continues to work in the US, a doctor, a lawyer, it's part of the time, or if he's in Israel and he's opening an Atzmai, an Osek Morshe, and he wants to work in Israel not as a Sachir, not get salary, but to work, to be self-employed, he will be taxed Israeli taxes on the same money he will and Israeli Social Security, and on the same amount of money he will pay also American Social Security. So double taxation, there is a treaty, so it's not a problem. But double Social Security it is. And because the American Social Security is not even considered as an expense, it means that sometimes with all the taxes, if someone in Israel gets a job offer to work 1 day a week in the US, even online, and he can be taxed 70% total on the income he will make from the US. And this double taxation prevents many people from making Aliyah, because just by the decision of moving to Israel, they will have to pay about 20% more of their income for taxes. And if they're in Israel and they get a job offer from the US, they say, no, thank you. I will work and I'll get 30%. No, thank you. And that create also a problem. So sometimes they will move back, they will return, or they won't make Aliyah to begin with. And all this because of this double taxation. This was a bill that was offered in the Knesset, I think, for the last 6 or 7 Knessets. And it never passed the preliminary reading. Baruch Hashem, we made it to pass the first reading last week, and I hope soon it will pass the second and the third reading. It was a lot of effort, mostly to change the mind of some people, but Baruch Hashem also we got the Social Security in Israel to support it, because they understood that first it's unequal treatment, and also the potential of getting more income and more people to make Aliyah, and so it's good for everyone. It's win-win, and I hope it will pass second and third reading very soon. I am, of course, dedicated to pass it. This is just one example. We can talk about many questions. מה שתבחרו.
Are you aware of the issue with some European countries? I work with the European Union, not France, but the UK and European Union only. Are you aware of the tax treaties not being applied to pre-1967 borders, including Golan, part of Yerushalayim?
What is not being recognized for that?
There's tax treaties with all European countries.
Tax treaties,
which also apply to Social Security. Let's say a country like the Netherlands, for example, that actively, in the last 10 years, actively go after people that live beyond the 1967 borders, including Yerushalayim and Sudan, and say that because they don't live in the trading borders, the tax treaties doesn't apply. Belgium does it as well. England does apply it on social security, like pensions, not regular pension fund, but kitzvat.
I did not hear about it. I will repeat the question. The question is that some European countries say that if someone lives behind the green lines, that the treaties do not apply.
Green line, not the green line. It's 1967 border.
1967 border. I think that's the green line. Okay.
The green line is what Israel.
No. Green line is 1967 border, but doesn't matter. Okay. 1967 borders, and if I'm aware, no, I was not. I will be very happy with if I will get some specific details, and I'll try to deal with it. It's
Problem people not being able to take their kitzvot with them to Israel.
again, I will try. It's of course it's a big problem, and we know it's not an Israeli problem. It's a problem with their politics, and we'll try to solve it. But we know there are issues now also with sanctions and also with other problems. But I will be very happy to get specifics and try to solve this.
Yes, I would like to know what, if there is such a situation, like there already was from Ukraine, that we had to get a lot of Jews in an emergency setting, what if there is in certain parts of the world that there needs to be an emergency evacuation of Jews from wherever, America, because of war, because of any situation? What is the Israeli government having a plan A, plan B, plan C for such a circumstance? How are they preparing for such a possibility?
How many years are you Israeli?
I'm only 44.
For only 44 years, and you still don't know that the Israeli government is not prepared for the future. Sorry. It was a joke, of course. I think that certain events, it happened in the past. We know how Israel dealt with it. Israel dealt with it in the past, and I would say I actually wrote one chapter of my book on this, that during 10 years, from 1992 to 2002, Israel got about 1 million people in 10 years, which is a huge amount to accept this. And the country was way smaller. In 1992, we were 5 million people, 5.5. So, and we got 1 million in a decade, which is a lot. And the housing prices, surprisingly, went down. So you would think that such a raise in demand will create a problem with the price. No, the prices went down. So of course there are the ability to build fast when the government decides that that's the right thing to do. Now it's a private building, but then the government said we are building by ourselves fast and efficiently, quite efficiently, and it happened. Also did it in Judea and Samaria, which was always, in my view, the land reserve for the state of Israel. And even now, it's a sad situation, but Israel now took about 100,000 people, refugees, from within Israel, meaning for very different reasons, of course. But so the ability of the state of Israel to deal with this kind of challenges, it exists. We saw in the past, we see today. I hope that the state of Israel will be ready to not to wait for a catastrophe. So it will happen, but we'll do whatever it takes. And there are a lot of measures that can be done today. And my friend, the Minister of Aliyah, Ophir Sofer, from my party, is working on plans to bring more and more people. So we see the numbers. He will be the one to speak about how to get people in. What to deal with them once they're in. We know there is the Ministry of Housing, there is the Ministry of Treasury, also Betzalel. Once they're here, but you cannot prepare for this kind of event. You need to make sure that your system is scalable enough to deal with it as it happens.
Why can't you buy 100,000, 200,000 tents.
We have a lot of tents now, reserves that stayed from all the demonstrations. We can just seize it for those matters. Yeah.
There are many, speaking of the demonstration, there are many people who say that the disunity in the Israeli people on October 6th contributed to October 7th. Do you believe that to be the case? And if you do, are there any regrets?
So, I think that the fact that we were not united was terrible. I think that the fact that some people even took into the political debate in Israel the threats of not going to the army and hurting the security of the state is not legitimate and should have been condemned by all parties. And I think it's good. It's for people that live in a very dangerous neighborhood. Unity is not something that we can give up. Never. Having said all that, when Sinwar was released from Israeli prison in the Gilad Shalit deal in 2011, 2012, and started gathering for a decade, more than a decade, weapons and building tunnels and having plans to do exactly what we saw on October 7th for so many years, he did not start to have his plans not on this government, not on the last government, and not in the last 5 years. And people who know more about this have said that the exactly same plan was to start in 2015. So I think it was terrible. Maybe it created a problem with the first few days of how we reacted because some of the people were not training enough or stuff like this. But I don't think, and I might be wrong, but I did not see any proof that A caused B. Meaning, this was the plan, they were waiting for an opportunity, that the army will not, will be in vacation. And I even heard that they almost tried to do it on Pesach. And there was something that confused them and they didn't do it on Pesach. On Pesach we stopped the reform. It was in the time of the negotiation in the president residency. So I think that people who try to connect A to B are doing it for political reasons, from both sides, by the way. I don't do it. I don't call it Netanyahu massacre, and I don't call it Kaplan massacre. I call it Sinwar and Hamas massacre, and that's the way we need to look at it. And we do need to learn never to endanger and threaten to endanger Israeli security because we are not happy with the government. That's something I think we need to learn, but not A is not connected to B in the way that I understand at least.
Thank you so much. My question, it also has a little solution. Housing is very expensive in Jerusalem. There's former church land issues. Would the state of Israel consider changing zoning in Jerusalem so that on church land and perhaps other properties, Pinoi, new construction can be a little bit taller than current zoning, because that would allow the owners there to say yes to Pinoi and building more builders. It would allow the builders to say yes and to have additional floors to accommodate all the new Olim from North America and elsewhere that we're expecting.
So first, I know that the policy of Jerusalem has been changed over the years to build more to heights and stuff like this. But also, what is the largest? It's like to say that the United States the housing prices are high and you cannot bring people to the U.S. because the prices in New York City are high. New York City is expensive. Phoenix, Arizona is the most growing city, I think. And I think the distance between Jerusalem and Modi'in, or Jerusalem and Petach Tikva, or Jerusalem and Ra'anana, or even, God forbid, Jerusalem and Be'er Sheva, and even further, is way closer than New York to Phoenix. So Israel is very small, sadly. We all want it to be larger. But Israel is very small, and the housing prices in Israel is not an issue only of the housing prices in Jerusalem. And that's why Jerusalem is one issue. I think I would consider, if I would, and I chose not to live in Jerusalem, not because of housing prices. I think Gush Etzion is a very good place to live.
What about freeing up...
and many other olim, things like that.
What about freeing up state lands to lower housing prices? The state owns an enormous amount of land. How about freeing that and opening that up to the private sector?
So land issue in Israel is a complicated issue for many reasons. And as one of the main voices for judicial reform, you probably guess, and I actually wrote, it's the first chapter of my book, how many of those problems are Bagat's fault, especially on issues of land. It needs to be solved. It's not easy. And the main problem is that Bagatz and the chief legal advisor have this very strange notion that you need to take away the land that was purchased for the JNF with the funding from Jews all around the world to be used to make Israel Jewish again, should be taken away from Kakal and from the Jewish people and be given to everyone in the open market, which is a problem. And that's what they do. And that's a problem. That's a problem ideologically. That's a problem. But what do you expect? Sorry, when they hear a case from the Palestinian Authority saying that the legislation that the Knesset has passed to take away pay for slay, so now the Palestinian Authority appealed to the Supreme Court and was not kicked at the doorstep. So that's what we have. We need to change it. I think we might need to do a judicial reform, but I'm not sure.
Last question?
I have two questions, a longer one and a shorter one. For the Social Security law, would that only help if somebody has a remote job from the U.S. and then Israel wouldn't take the leave, or would it even help if somebody let's say my wife has a teak, sick or shad, she right now pays both, the U.S. and Israel, but she's first paying to Israel.
So a Sek Moshe issue is more complicated. On the first step, it will be for the people who make their income in the U.S. That's easier to solve. On a Sek Moshe, it's harder to solve for many reasons. But also on a Sek Moshe, I'm not giving tax advices, but it's easier to solve because you have a firm, and you can work for a tlush for someone. It's easier to solve and go around it, legally, of course, not illegally. But the first step, it will be like this, and I hope down the road, maybe next time, it will be also dealing with this Osek Moshe stuff. I think the Osek Moshe will have to go find a different solution, like maybe a single partnership that does not exist in Israel but exists in the U.S. and creates a different tax entity.